beautiful Tuesday morning is upon us. Good morning. Welcome to your perfect day starter, the Morning Brief. I'm Karadoki Kulu, and we're live for you in Lagos.
And we're up bright and early as always. Good morning and welcome to your perfect day starter right here on Channels Television.
All right, 14 days down the line, and he's going to. Oh, I thought you were done. Why were you doing slow motion? Okay, 14 days down the line, I was saying. And tomorrow is Armed Forces Remembrance Day, so we're just counting down to that day. But a lot has been going on in the country. We'll bring you up to speed. Welcome. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo.
The day has barely started. I think it's 1-0 now.
1-0 for today, right?
No, I didn't know she was still talking.
Don't worry, Jeffrey.
She talked and paused. Let's keep talking.
Scratch.
I'll be on guard.
Right.
So that I can.
But it's quite interesting. Now, if both of you were in politics, it would be an interesting sight. Really.
Right.
I mean, see what's playing out in Lagos. And a lot of people are wondering, Lagos politics is quite interesting. So there's that on the one hand. And there's also the politics of tradition, or the traditional politics. How do you describe that, particularly in your state,
right?
So it's quite interesting, and I wonder how people are seeing this, because we had that conversation yesterday about the system of governance we operate here in Nigeria, democracy. And this is a conversation we've had time and again. Is it that we're using the wrong system? Do we just go back and say, let's use a system that really, in that sense, works for us, a system we're used to? Because for a lot of people, Jeffrey Bukola, they understand the politics going on in your state better. They are more vested in that politics than the ones they're seeing out playing in the states like Lagos, Rivers, and the rest. So maybe this is another day we get to examine that conversation. Do we go back or just keep forging ahead?
Well, I guess it's a question that will need to be asked in the coming days. Sometimes we take a respite from these issues, not necessarily because we have moved past them, with deliberate decisions that will show, where exactly we're headed in the future in terms of the kind of governance that is best suited for the country, either it's parliamentary or presidential. But perhaps because politicking has been done with the election of a new president and legislators for the National Assembly and governors, and then we take a respite, a breather, and then life goes on as usual. But ahead of another general elections, these issues resurface yet again, and I won't be surprised if they come into the front burner ahead of the 2027 elections, and you would see that some of those things are beginning to shape the politics of 2027, perhaps as far as Lagos is concerned. So questions are being asked about whether or not it is a crime to have an ambition or not, how that impacts on the politics of 2027. Does it have anything to do with who becomes the next Lagos governor? And what are the other interests that seem to be shaping this event of impeachment that cannot be ignored? So we'll be asking those questions in a few hours on The Brief, your perfect morning starter. But is
more
politics...
like a few minutes, Bukola.
Yeah, more like a few minutes.
I mean, few minutes.
But Kayode, is politics also integral to determining who becomes a paramount traditional ruler rather than what the gods say? Maybe it's a conversation that we should also have in the coming days.
That's another kettle of fish.
Because it's taking how many months now before a new Alafin has emerged?
The gods have spoken. Whoever those gods are.
Who did the gods speak to?
I don't know, but I'm just sticking to what the gods do.
Because some will say government is God. And then they say, no, there's the tradition.
I'm just sticking to what the gods do. But it's interesting what's going on in Lagos State. But the difference between Lagos and Rivers politics, for instance, it's a bit one-sided. It's more of intra-wranglings and as to all of. But of course, this is 2027 at its best. This is a question of who said what against who and who is behaving what way or the other. So there's enough blame to go around, and everybody has finally learned their lesson. But there's an ultimate end game, and the guys who know how to plot this game have already started plotting, and that's where we're going to start from. Actually, the impeachment of Mudashiru Obasa as the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly. For the record, he's been in the House for 18 years. Out of those 18 years, 10 he's been Speaker, and the magic happened yesterday. That gentleman will no longer sit on that chair. He will now be a floor member. For the first time, Lagos now has a female speaker Is this a path to women emergence? Bukola likes this kind of talk, but hey, we'll talk about that later on the program.
2-0 now, Okay, so you can also be a part of the conversation. Of course, let's not forget that hashtag CTV Morning Brief is the handle.
Absolutely. And we'll also be taking a look at the 2025 budget. Oh, yes. It's a major talking point, particularly looking through that budget. If you've had time to look through the budget, you definitely will have questions. So today we sort of seek to demystify that document, all of the questions that have been raised about insertions, is it duplication, lack of clarity, and all of that. We'll dive right in on the show this morning with the help of some of those who've been keeping a close eye on the process, the document, and the people behind that process.
Whilst we're taking a look at that budget, we also look at food security. What exactly is going on with food security in Nigeria? In fact, food security is very, very critical to national security, and so they go hand in hand. The government had made promises. Some of those promises, they failed flat on those promises. But there are areas they've done well. We'll take a look at all of the elements right here on the program.
And that's not all. We'll also be exploring education. But before we get to that part, we'll go to the movies where we chat with, one of your favorite movie directors, actor, even models on his journey in the industry and, what the near future portends for Nigerian movie industry dubbed Nollywood.
And finally, education. We've been very big on education for obvious reasons. And there's this man who's simplifying math with the use of pidgin. Yes, you hear with that talk. So today on the show, we're bringing you this gentleman as it demystifies math. Hopefully, this is your lifeline to figure math once and for all. Because math can be very tricky.
It can be very tricky. But don't forget, at CTV Morning Brief, the hashtag, as Bukola had mentioned, is how you get to us to amplify your voice. Social media of choice is X. And of course, the WhatsApp number as well is how you can reach us. But we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you all the things we're talking about right here on the program. Join us again.
Welcome to our newspaper stand of sorts. We all know these stands. You stand around and you argue all day about the issues in Nigeria. So let's give you informed conversation right here. Joining us is Mr. Denny Fatai, media analyst and public affairs analyst as well. Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Yeah, good morning. It's my pleasure to be here once again.
Great to have you, and it's a very interesting day.
Yeah.
Because lots of stories making the round. So let's begin with the Nigerian Tribune. The Nigerian Tribune has on its front page, no guarantee yet there will be no more grid collapse. That's from the power minister. Says that system crashed only 8 times in 2024. Insecurity, vandalism, poor infrastructure remain major threats to grid. It says ministry plans solar lights, CCTV for highways. The senators hit discos again, want privatization reversed. So we're starting with that important sector, the power sector. And the minister says there is no guarantee that there will be no more grid collapse. I imagine Nigerians will say I reject it, but he's saying the reality. But is this enough to just say there's no guarantee? Does it sound like we're giving up, or you sense something else from this statement?
Yes, I sense something else. If you look at what the minister have said, that major bulk buyer or purchaser of power or electricity, as it were, they are, building their own sourcing alternative energy. We have over 5,000 megawatts have been generated by those companies, numbering almost 200 companies. And sometimes when a facility is not put to use, underutilization can cause power grid. But I think the minister, they can do more if they can perform. Not that there are some areas you come up with an estimated bill. There are some areas you have your prepaid meter and you complain, and the disco will come back and say there's nothing we can do, let's just put you back on direct line, and they are back in business. So those are the things they need to look into.
Because for a lot of Nigerians, that statement, yes, it may be the reality, but it's not enough. He was defending the budget. He talked about the budget for the ministry over 2 trillion naira. Part of the budget will be to get people's meters, of course, a salary payment. But he mentioned something quite interesting, that the Kaduna Shiroro Mando line is one of the issues. That's why we keep having the grid collapse. And he talked about insecurity being a major factor. And that's why I said, for Nigerians, will this be enough? What more must the minister do to push this and give us a statement that from today there will be no more grid collapse?
Yes, I think they need to work hand in hand with our maybe security forces. I'm sure when a governor, a state or government official is going somewhere, whether urban area or rural area, they go with routine of security.
Right.
If you know our national asset is here and is very critical to our day-to-day living, I'm sure they can provide adequate security to mount those facility or those assets, so that Nigerian can have, let me say, even if it's not 24 hours, at least if it's 20 hours, you know,
we don't mind, right?
Yes, yes.
And that's the challenge now. We are lowering the bar. The goal should be 24 hours, but because we've not been able to have even the semblance of 10, we're saying just give us 20.
Just give us 20,
but
you can do something.
On behalf of Nigerians, we need 24-hour power supply, and more needs to be done. So that's the Minister of Power speaking there. But right under the big picture on the front page, you see an explainer of that picture. Makinde presents new Alafi staff of office certificate, threatens to prosecute Oyomesi over bribery allegation, says coronation to hold in 4 weeks. And we had that conversation about the democracy kind of, and this is our monarchical kind of governance. It looks like wherever you turn, there will be issues, but it points to the fact that the people are really the drivers of whichever governance system you have. And if the people are not honest, if the people do not have, you know, the standards which they adhere to, then whatever governance that you introduce would still be faulty. So what is your take on this one?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think if you don't put your house in order, it will be very easy for an internal forces, you know, to come around and tell you how to do things.
Right.
And I believe that the government, being the custodian of the state, whether monarchical or democracy, whatever it is, I think in their own wisdom to forestall whatever kind of wrangling that is coming up maybe between the family, and they have chosen somebody, and you know, government is the number one. So he has done the right thing to me, so that to make sure that everybody just put your structure together and let's move forward. We have so much problem to fix that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if the governor will go ahead with that threat to probe Oyomesi, because then it will look like a targeted. But I mean, do you think it's the way to go?
Yeah, it's the way to go. Sometimes we make some statement carelessly. We are not cautious, because when you are hungry, you can. So this time around, I think every statement somebody makes should be able to justify or have something to back it up. You won't say because you are hungry or something that does not favorable to you and you just speak to it anyhow. So the office of a governor is a big office that needs to be defended. And
Certainly. Very interesting. Let's turn to the next paper now, and that is, I'm spoiled for choice right now, but let's go to New Telegraph newspaper, because this touches on security. And this is what you find on the front page of New Telegraph for today, Tuesday, January the 14th. Over 60,000 surrendered Boko Haram members are children. Over 60,000, and that's coming from a man who knows better, the CDS. Let me take some of the explainers. It says as many insurgents are not willing participants, some conscripted, some forced or enslaved. And then you see Zulum demands action as 40 farmers, fishermen shot dead in Borno, many missing, several injured during attack. And NAF probes accidental killings in Zamfara state. So it's a mix of different things. You have the revelation. For some it is shocking. Some knew this already. Over 60,000 are children.
That's mind-blowing.
I mean, it is. And then you see the incident in Borno state. This is huge. If this were to happen in other climes, it will be a major shutdown. I mean, look at this. 40 farmers, fishermen shot dead in Borno State. So have we come to maybe normalize these things? Because some experts will tell you the incidents have been increasing. It's not come down. So when you hear that we have, nipped security, the incidents are still there. And now you say a death toll of 40. So have we come to normalize it, or this is still some sort of improvement?
No, we shouldn't normalize it. I think the security apparatus needs to be looked into. If we have a problem in a sector, in a section of the country, I thought the former president said that the CDS should relocate back to Borno. I don't know where we are on that, but I feel that they can do better, and data is still our problem. When we don't have data, we don't invest more on software. Somebody make a statement, text message exchange, something that can, give the security an inkling that there's something that is going on. You can't continue to do the same thing and expect different results. So I think they should do better. We have a problem here. Fix it or deploy so many men so that people can feel safe. And that's the work of a government, for property and life to be secure.
It's not too much to ask.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I just take quickly, still on the front page of the New Telegraph, and it's quite interesting how this is captioned. 2027, cracks in Tinubu's camp as Lagos Assembly removes Speaker Obasa. When you see that story, is that what you see? Cracks in Tinubu's camp?
No, I'm not sure. Cracks, rather. This is someone who has been there for years, and I don't believe that they say a tree does not make a forest. And if you have been doing it, I remember the last time Mr. Governor presented the budget, that was kept waiting for hours, the party leaders and all of that. That the man in question has want to feel like an emperor that cannot be
three-term speaker. It's understandable. 6 terms as a member.
As a member of this. So I think the only thing that is constant is change. If the House look at it that the way they are going, they need a better person in place, and thanks to Lagos State House of Assembly having the first female speaker. So I can say it's a fresh start for them. Let's see how it will play out, but I don't see any crack.
You don't see any crack? Because it's a Tinubu man as well.
Yeah, it is.
And he has his own support base as well.
Sometimes they say whoever father loves, he shares ties. And like some of the party leaders we are hearing from the filler, that the last time Mr. President was in Lagos, an issue was stable, it's just like...
So maybe this decision was made when the president
yes, I believe, because one of the party leaders said that when Mr. President was around, so many things were tabled before him, and it's not as if he's going to feel like, what's going on there?
Right. Interesting. Next up is Leadership newspaper, and Leadership newspaper has this one above the National Assembly now. Knocks over planned NAS zonal offices. Stakeholders kick, say it's constitutional aberration, waste of resources, and you see it's not in Nigeria's interests. NAS zonal offices.
We have so much to do and sometimes some of these are politicians. If something that is going to favor them, you remember the last time they said they want to get them utility vehicle, millions of naira is going to. So sometimes they promote what favor them. If it's not going to favor them, they hardly come to. But we just pray that they will listen to the voice of the people and say this is not what we need right now. Even the one we are complaining that they are spending so much, to keep. In fact, I think they should make National Assembly a part-time job. Right. It's not every time that you are there sitting allowance, even when you are not seated, oversight allowance when you are not overseeing anything. And
zonal officers. It's interesting some of these things you read. But News Direct is next. Quickly on the show, Nigeria News Direct is talking NAS, but a different angle to this. You see, NAS probes 4 trillion naira revenue shortfall due to waivers. Threatens to cut JAM funding over 1.1 billion naira spent on meals, 850 million naira to kill mosquitoes.
You know, sometimes just like I listen to you during the morning brief, when you're saying you hear some figure, you hear some things, you know, even in the budget, some they are not correlated, they are not corresponding. You know, spending so much to kill mosquito. I think, come on, wow. Do you sleep in an office to know that mosquito? You know, so many things. But I think it is in their own wisdom to look at it that we don't need this now. If there's anything need to be scrapped, they should remove it. And if there's something that can be add value, that can add value to the society, to Nigeria, I think they can add that, but not this.
Wow. Couple of more stories for you this morning, but let's just
spend 1 million to kill mosquito here. That's just the light thought.
I know. Let's move on now to the next daily. That's Blueprint newspaper. Blueprint newspaper leads with, of course, the Lagos story, how Lagos Assembly ousted Nigeria's longest-serving speaker, Obasa. And you see, this one will interest you. PDP back to trenches. Anyanwu resumes as secretary amid protests. You see, ex-senator, a lawbreaker resulting to self-help, says Ologunagba. It's quite interesting how Blueprints puts it. PDP back to the trenches. But was there a time that PDP came out of the trenches? Because ever since the Jonathan era, just after that, the PDP has had its own fair share of breaks with leadership, even candidature and all of that. That's why we now have a sitting member of the PDP serving in an APC government. The APC won a state and presidential election. So was there any time really that the PDP came out of the trenches?
No. I don't see that, but I believe that what PDP need now is just for them to rally around together. They don't need to. They say a house divided, you know, against itself cannot stand. So what they need now, they should close ranks. If they need to merge, is not about their own interest or personal ambition. Is if you're saying you are fighting for Nigeria, that you can do better, we should see it and the way you rule your affairs. So for Nigeria to have confidence in you, that okay, should we choose to bring a new party on board, maybe we might consider you. But if you are going about this way, I think it's not speaking well on their part. So
the PDP has been underwhelming in terms of the opposition.
Yes. Really.
So that's what you see. We'll definitely see how this will play out in the coming days. So I think that's where we can anchor for now with the front pages. Definitely stay with us right here. We'll do a deep dive into those stories for you. But we have to thank you so much, Mr. Adeni Ifetare, media analyst, public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here once again.
All right, there you have it. So the dailies have given you a tip of the iceberg, but we're doing a deep dive right now in some of the stories, and that's in a moment. Stay with us right here. It's morning.
Welcome back to the program. So we're going to be starting off with a second and yet another look at the budget, because we've had series of segments to scrutinize the budget in the recent past, particularly because it's the start of the year and it's very good time to set an agenda for the 2025 budget. Of course, we'll try to bring you yet again the conversation on the Lagos impeachment. But let's start with the budget, which with many concerns, about a huge chunk of the budget that will be financed through debt servicing. So joining us this morning to look at the budget is Mr. Azeez Olatoye, who is the Vice Chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. We'll also be having Professor Ibrahim Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship and Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, Kaduna State University. But we'll begin with Mr. Azeez Olatoye on the program. Mr. Azeez, let's start by looking at, commencement of budget defense by ministries and parastatals at the National Assembly, for which quite a number of findings have been made. For instance, JAM has been making presentations, and the National Assembly members have been wondering why in the first place should government continue to fund the institution if it is making some remittances back, and some of the spendings of the institution cannot be justified. If we started with that, for instance, and take a look at other agencies of government that have been presenting defense for their own 2025 allocation, what are your thoughts in terms of what allocations should be going to certain agencies and others that shouldn't even have as much allocation as they should?
Okay, thanks very much for having me again this morning on this program, and good morning to all Nigerians and all viewers worldwide. I think the major challenge in the budget details, as it is said that usually devil is in the details, but I would say angel is in the details when we look at those details. So there are two major issues I think we need to focus on. The first one is the quality, of the budget, and the other one is the effectiveness, of the budget. And these are the measurements that people will be looking at. That okay, we are budgeting these amounts for this expenditure. Will these amounts, be commensurate to the quality we will be expecting from the spending? And that is one of the major issue in terms of the quality of the expenditure. For instance, if let's say 100% is budgeted for an expenditure, ordinarily there will be an expectation that this amount is actually commensurate with a similar amount spent on a similar project. But where an amount is delivering like 1/3 of the amount spent on the expenditure on the project, for example, then one will be wondering. For instance, I know in the past people have a lot of experience to juxtapose. If you look at the project in Nigeria, for example, you compare it with another country like Qatar, like maybe a gas project, for example, you will see that what is spent in Nigeria is almost 3 times what is spent in other country, like on a gas project. And why is that so? Because there are a number of ineffective payments that doesn't add value to those projects. And some of these ministries, they have to package all those things into the budget. And this is where the challenge is coming from. And so ordinarily when people look at it, then it's not going to be commensurate. So this is an area that we need to look at. For example, if a budget is submitted in Nigeria, the assumption is that, look, there are some other payments that will go in there for the budget really to deliver on that project. The other one is that there are a number of interests, that will be conflicting in respect of that, project. So where such an estimate is presented and is approved, at the end of the day, you have where somebody is very strict and he controls the expenditure, there is going to be refund in some areas. In most areas, there will be no refund because people will say, oh, it's already been budgeted for. Let's just find a way of spending it. But at the end of the day, when you measure the performance vis-a-vis the amount that was spent, you cannot actually, say that this amount is spent for this project. For instance, we've been talking about maintenance, turnaround maintenance in this country for years, for which billions are going to be spent for that maintenance of a refinery. And no barrel is going to be refined. And all these expenditures will go down the drain. So people will keep talking. So the expectation this time around is that we should have a quality budget where the budget actually is productive. So it's more about the quality of the budget in terms of the productivity of what the budget, is actually spent on. I've broken it down, avoiding as much technical jargon as possible, so that we can see exactly what the concern of people, and it's so unclear in some areas that, okay, we said we want to spend X amount. The issue is that, what are we expecting? So the expectation of the people in most cases, are not being met based on the budget quantum. And this is really the challenge that a number of people are raising on various headings. If we pick those headings and say, oh, is this what we are going to spend on this? Are we going to have, a commensurate value for the amount that is being spent? So that is the major challenge that we are discussing.
All right, Mr. Aziz, we're going to come to a line item and some of the projects here. Some things are quite funny when you look at this budget. But I want you to speak further broadly. 49.7 trillion, that's a proposal of the appropriation bill. But from the analytics I have done, for 60% of this budget is going to reputation management and recurrent operations. What I mean by that, if about 15 to 16 trillion is going to debt service, it's just to manage our reputation so that we can be able to borrow more in the future as a country, and just to show how, where the integrity of our country to be able to pay back our debt. And then issue of recurrent is about operation. So if you add 14 trillion to about 15, 16 trillion, that's about 30 trillion or 49. That's almost about 60% of the budget. How productive can a budget be when 60% is for reputation management and recurrent operations, not capital?
Correct. I talk about effectiveness broadly, and that's exactly one of the points I mean. I remember in the last time we were having this conversation, left for me, the amount budgeted for debt servicing is a huge loss, because if we are having a revenue of 36.35 trillion and we try to manage within that, and we have like a balanced budget, and we save this 14 trillion on debt servicing, or all these image, managing, then that will be value adding to our people. If we take less debt servicing, for example, I ask the question, do we really need to continue with this debt? I'm very sure the Honorable Minister of Finance and the coordinating, Minister of Economy had already said that, look, on the long run, probably this debt, we have to look into it. My own honest position, and from a very reasonable position, is that why do we have to have this debt there? And why can't we be using, PPP projects for some of that project that is leading to, debt? We've already had it in this country. Somebody cannot say, well, what is he talking about? That we don't need to have a debt. In 1999, during the President Obasanjo's time, he negotiated some of these debts and brought them down. To let's cancel this and use PPP for a lot of the projects. So if we use alternative funding methods, we don't have to be paying interest or debt servicing sums. These are very huge sums that are very ineffective. Let the debt be given to private sectors who are really going to be productive, and that we are going to have very solid economy. If we are paying about over 14 trillion or 15 trillion in debt servicing, look at the quantum of life, the value of people that is going to raise the standard of living. Let's take additional 5 trillion to health, additional 5 trillion to education, additional 5 trillion into road infrastructure, to be specific, or into power, and the government is giving this into them. Let's compare it with giving 15 trillion to debt servicing. Who benefits from the debt servicing? Nobody. It's just, as you have rightly said, previous government have taken debt and then we have to pay for this. Yes, I know the obligation is there. Government has to honor the obligation, but we should stop increasing or going forward on this debt. because it doesn't add any value to anyone, with utmost respect. And the banks are going to do better if they are giving the debt to those who are going to utilize them. The same amount will be given to private sectors, and government is going to do a PPP, project, and they will deliver on them. Because it's private sector, they will not allow the money to be spent anyhow. But this is a situation where government will take money for a project, so government will continue to pay the debt. Now we will now be squeezing the tax revenue.
Right.
We will squeeze the tax revenue from income tax, from various, sources of taxes. We will then be using them to pay debts. So how does that benefit Nigerians? With utmost respect.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Latoye. Let me go to Professor Yushao Ango, who's Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship and the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Kaduna State University. Kaduna, you're welcome to the program, Prof. Seeing the conversation now about how we're trying to eke out revenue either from taxation, from borrowing here and there, trying to meet a revenue target just to fund this budget. And then you see some of the elements in that budget and you wonder, is this the best way to spend borrowed funds, or at least the hard-earned money from Nigerians? And I'm talking about some of the issues raised by CSOs, Nigerians, economists. And I'll take this one by Mr. Otuebe, saying that some of the elements there are not priorities for spending borrowed money. Service-wide votes continue the tradition of lump sum votes for vaguely described expenditure items, which at the end of the year cannot guarantee value for money. We'll get deeper into this, but have you seen anything change about this budget, or is just the same of the same in terms of how we are spending this hard-earned money, Prof?
What we are doing, or what we have been doing sincerely for some years that I can remember, is that we seem not to be very conscious of our realities. If you remember, during the regime of General Obasanjo, we have had a situation whereby most of our Paris Club debt was actually resolved, meaning that we didn't have much debt on our neck. Now, there is nothing wrong with debt per se, but what we have done of recent, since then, is that we have been building up debt, and some of it is not to service or to provide infrastructure. It's actually to service some things that are day-to-day. Some of them, of course, they can give you a debt, especially the Bretton Woods institutions, just to cover your trade gaps, or to probably even give you a debt that will just be used basically to train for training or some other things, very funny things. And then meanwhile, we're building a deficit every year in, year out. There's nothing wrong with deficit, but when it is growing at a stage, at a level as has been projected this year, and then vis-a-vis the debt servicing that is required also annually, the two of them put together are competing completely, much more than the capital expenditure that is required to drive growth. Then we have a problem, and basically we don't seem to observe or agree that we have such problems. So what we need to do as a nation, as a country, that has a problem that we're faced with, is to actually look at all those frivolous expenditures that are not required and remove them. We don't have to put them there. We are just making budget to be a routine. You come in, year out, people will just go and slot some amounts, into this or that. Basically, not conscious of the fact that we're building a trap. Because see, this debt servicing is going to be a major issue for us. I assure you, if we are not careful, the problem is that we'll fall into this, maybe the space that probably some countries have entered into, and then you begin to see all sorts of conditionalities given by these same bodies. They are giving us loans that are not beneficial to us. I don't have a problem with loans that are given to us that are purely for infrastructure, that go directly into infrastructure, provided, like the last speaker said, we're also using, or at least applying, the cost, that is competitive globally. What we have done And what I have seen is that most of our projects even are way priced well above the international average. Now, given our condition, I don't think we're doing ourselves, we're fair to ourselves, as a country, going into those and then building this problem that in a few years to come, the debt servicing vis-a-vis the deficit will catch up with us, and I don't think it would be funny.
All right, I, for good reason, I want to go back to the appropriation that has gone to agencies. And if you looked at the budget, a number of agencies that have quite a number of allocations to them. Talking about the National Agency for Science and Technology. In that mix, you also find a Bureau for Public Enterprises that are getting a chunk of the budget. I'm trying to look for the exact figure now. Jeffrey talked about productivity earlier. If you looked at, the productivity of this even past budget, what measure have they contributed such that there is a justification for the huge sums allocated to these agencies? Professor Ibrahim, that's for you.
Okay, so thank you. If we see the details, then we can say for sure what it is for. But like you said rightly, like for example, we know that Ministry of Finance Incorporated has a budget that is improved, so to say. A chunky amount has been put there, which probably is the largest in the transport sector. But we got to know that they are going to invest in one of the rail projects in Lagos. Then questions have been asked, are these going to be replicated all over? So what I'm saying is that it's when you see the details that you can see what it is for, that, for example, some of those agencies are having this. But beyond even what is there for agencies, or some agencies that look somehow funny, we also have, like has been stated over and over again, insertions and amounts that are very unnecessary. Maybe for purchase of vehicles here and there, for purchase of computers, for purchase of furniture, year in, year out. Now, if we know truly that we're in an emergency situation, I don't think this is the time to actually print our way, whatever little we have, into various transactions here and there, or into budgetary provisions here and there. And more often than not, what happens is that at the end of the year, whether or not there was need to spend those monies, towards the end of the year, you see MDAs, everybody rushing helter-skelter to ensure that they utilize the money, so that it will not, elapse, into the next year's appropriation or whatever. So basically, it is in the details that we'll know for sure what the BPE or other agencies like that had these huge allocations to them.
Let's go to Mr. Aziz. Mr. Aziz, I want you to maybe expatiate on what Prof has said. These insertions, do you think that when budget is being prepared with the greatest sense of respect to the people who prepared this budget, it appears to some of us like good percentage is copy and paste? Because I don't know how you have to be buying spoon every day, every year, or buying vehicle every year. It doesn't make sense. So for instance, I'm seeing in the Ministry of Works that about one of their line items here, is it like, yeah, one of the projects they are doing, or line item, whatever it's called, purchase of vehicles for SSAs, 2 billion naira. And there are other purchases of maybe utility vehicles and all of. When you see all of this, how should Nigerians actually internalize some of these things? Because the same government will come out and say, there's no money, there's paucity of fund, 13 trillion is going to be borrowed, either from local, domestic, or foreign sources, and we need to tie our belt, and Nigerians need to bear with us. And then you see some of these ludicrous provisions, some of them absolutely vague. You can't, if you query it, and there's going to be a law, because sometimes people don't get that this is called a law, an appropriation act. That means if the money is available, it has to be spent. So if something is vague, it gives room for corruption.
Thank you very much. Absolutely, Prof. Had said it, and you see, by way of a very clear analysis, I think there should be a session, probably television session for budget review and critical analysis from time to time. Some of these expenditures They are just being repeated expenditures with utmost respect for no value. But let me say that those who are preparing the budget, in most cases, they are constrained. Because somebody is submitting a budget that this is what we need. And you are querying it that, okay, what about the one you bought last year, year before? All these things are assets. They are not depleted assets. Most of them are ions. So where are they? These are the questions that needs to be asked, in terms of the details that I said, angel is in the details or devil is in the details. So these are questions that needs to be asked. And we can only address this by picking each of those headings. For instance, let's pick the issue of 13 trillion. The first question is, should we incur 13 trillion based on the projected expenditure of 49 trillion expenditure budget? Should we increase 13 trillion? Let us come and discuss it. My question would be no. We shouldn't borrow for this 13 trillion. Let's look at an alternative. I know people like Prof, economists, will now come up and tell us the alternative to borrowing 13 trillion. Let's look at the project that falls into those extra. Number one, I have mentioned the issue of public-private partnership.
Mr. Aziz, my apologies for busting in. I totally agree with what you're saying. Shouldn't we start that, reviewing that deficit by looking at line item to even reduce it further before we load the gap? For instance, Ministry of Works, I just pointed it out to you, is spending 2 billion naira to buy SSAs, senior special or something like assistance to whoever, vehicles. Yeah. I also saw one of the line items, I can't remember where they are spending, not Ministry of Budget now, Ministry of Works, another ministry spending about 300 million naira to do meetings. For God's sake, what is going on?
These are things that I absolutely agree that we need to be reviewing them on the line by line item. Let's ask the question, you want to buy, okay, 2 billion or whatever, 2 trillion, cars and whatever. Okay, where are the ones that were there before? What year were they bought? What is their status? Those who were there before, did they carry them away? Are these personal assets or their organizational assets? So we need a list of all the cars that were there before. So why are we replacing them? If we are trading them in, return them to the owner, get a new one, why should the cost be up to this? So those who have those who have prepared the budget, they must have done, their own work within the constraints, of what was given to them. But when it is subjected to public scrutiny, even if we don't get it right this year, I know next year, those who are preparing the budget will be able to tell His Excellencies that, look, let's be very careful here, because these things are going to be, reviewed, and all Nigerians are going to see what we are doing. We already have about 60, vehicles used by the SSA before. Where are those 61s? Now, if we just want to augment a little bit, it shouldn't be up to this. And these are the public scrutiny that we have to put into each of those expenditures. With utmost respect, if we are able to critique each of these expenditures, at the end of the day, if we don't arrive at a surplus budget, we are likely going to arrive at a balanced budget. And the issue of further, depletion through debt servicing is going to be minimal.
Right.
As I said, we reviewed the issue of debt servicing critically. We go to 1999 when the Paris Club, debt was forgiven, and part of it was paid. Can't we adopt the same strategy and look at a BOT, for example? Some of the things that government really want to fund through, the capital expenditure, let's have them, and let's look at people in the industry. All I just want is that the government will have credibility to be able to have contract with people who can do this project without breaching those contracts.
Well, let me take it to Prof now, because what we're describing for some may sound like a crime, really. Misuse of funds, profligacy in an obvious time of, dearth of funds, right? Looking through the analysis, some have said we can save as much as 1 trillion naira in this budget if some of these, exuberant spendings, repetition, spending billions for things like vehicles, as we said, vehicles that you have before. A lot of these vehicles are still working very well. Things like buildings for special advisors. You wonder, we have offices already that these people can use. In any case, how much of an office do you need? So should we maybe be talking about looking at these issues as some sort of crime against Nigeria? Because obviously we need these monies for other things and not to enrich the already rich in some cases.
You have put it correctly. This is a crime against the people of Nigeria. That is just what it is. Now, basically, I want to suggest that if there is, we can do a whole year, 2 years, 3 years, as a policy, you are not going to buy any vehicles. Now, nothing will happen. We can do 2, 3, 4, 5 years without renovating any presidential building or offices or anything, and nothing will happen. We can spend 3, 4, 5 years without buying vehicles, without this, without that. So if we are serious about our situation and we truly want to change the way we are, and we truly want to push ourselves, especially if we have to spend, let's spend on infrastructure. Let's spend on what will generate jobs. Let's spend on what will bring productivity. So we can do away with this. We can fast if it is fasting. But what is lacking is that this fasting is going on by me and you and the average Nigerian, but this fasting is not being faced on, those who are at the helm of affairs are not facing it. Why? If everybody needs to suffer for the economy to be better, I think we need to suffer all together. So that is what is missing. And in the process of this, people are feeding fat on the economy, people are making a lot of money, and the generality of Nigerians are carrying the burden. And so to me, you put it correctly when you say it's a crime. It's a crime against Nigeria. If we have to spend 1 naira more than what we need to spend, if we have to spend where we don't need to spend, and when we have a situation as we have challenges of revenue, we have challenges of meeting up with infrastructure, we have deficit in infrastructure base, so we need to push that, not to be servicing debts or other things. We need to come up with structures that will favor Nigeria. My co-presenter also said something about PPP. There are many other options. We can, for example, capitalize the NNPC, and take it to the market. We get a little percentage of it. It will cover a lot of this infrastructure we need. We don't have to go borrowing. There are many things we can do. We can do build, operate, and transfer like you suggested. We can do many things, but we can actually fast. What I mean fast, quote and unquote, in terms of these luxuries, these flimsy things, furniture, vehicles. We can put a stop for 3 years and nothing will happen. And that is, to me, would be something like, okay, the masses are suffering. We also that are there at the helm of affairs are also aligning with them, are going along with them. We're not changing any vehicles. We're not buying any more aircrafts. We're not buying any more yachts. We're not doing any, so that, you show that you are also with the people, in terms of their suffering. And I think we need to do this. If we do that, then definitely what will happen is that when we're very prudent, then we don't have so much deficit, because that what we call deficit may not even be there. Because the problem of deficit is that we are going to borrow money to finance it. We don't have to borrow more money. Let us manage with what we have. Then wherever we need to borrow, then let it be for infrastructure, nothing else. And wherever we can finance infrastructure through BOT, that is transparent, that is, or through some other means, let's do it. Let's capitalize and take some of these critical assets to the market. And then, in that sense, we're not borrowing. We're actually, investing our hard, our investment. Are using a process from our investment, into our infrastructure base. That is what is happening somewhat to Aramco, Saudi Aramco. That was valued at about $2 trillion, and automatically that brings a lot of money to the country when you do that, and then you can actually invest significant portion of it into infrastructure in particular, which will bring productivity, especially power, energy, transportation, especially rails and things like that. So that is what we need to do. But we should not be having deficit out of what actually is frivolous that we can do away with, and nothing will happen. Nobody will feel anything about it, and there will not be anything lost. That is my suggestion.
All right. It feels like a vicious cycle, really, if you consider that, time and again we have similar conversations around repetitions in the budget, needless introductions, even sometimes, budget padding as alleged by members of the National Assembly, which also do not lead anywhere. And we wonder if the members of the National Assembly are scrutinizing the budget right now with the objective, with the goal of reducing all of those repetitions, rather than ensuring that the budget meets the right cycle of January to December. But clearly it's an ongoing conversation, and that's why we will continue to look at them. We want to thank you very much, gentlemen. Professor Ibrahim Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, Kaduna State University. Also joining us on this conversation is Mr. Aziz Olatoye, Vice Chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for Olatoye. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So much more that you were saying about, the budget and other subject matters. Kaide is set to bring us up to speed with trends.
Well, absolutely, Bukola. We're starting right off here in Lagos. Big day yesterday for Lagos politics as we saw Obasa out, Miranda in. I mean, it's a sports term. But what have you been saying about that big decision? For some people, it just happened from nowhere. They never saw this coming. For a man who had been in the assembly 6 terms, had been speaker for 3 terms, some people thought he was going to do this for as long as possible, but not anymore. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Lagos State Assembly has a new speaker, a female speaker, I shall say, and that man whom you see there is no more speaker. So the woman raising her hand is now the Speaker of the Lagos State Assembly, Mojisola Miranda. What a day, really. But the moment she was taking the oath of office, really, and the handle of the State Assembly put up a tweet saying that 90% of the lawmakers impeached Mr. Obasa. So 90%, give or take, 40 lawmakers in the Lagos State Assembly. So 90%, well, not all, certainly, but clearly more than what the law says we need for an impeachment. But let's take a look at what you're saying about that impeachment. Captain Cook has the first statement on this one. Captain Cook has this to say: big lessons from this. Lesson 1. Oh yes, this user is listing the lessons. Never outshine your master. So who is the master in this case? Big question. Secondly, conceal your intention. What intention do you refer to? Is it the governorship ambition or the rumored governorship ambition? This one, do not build fortress to protect yourself. So what do you build to protect yourself, Captain Cook? He also says, keep your hands clean. You're talking about the allegations, and avoid stepping into the great man's shoes. Okay, so quite a number of lessons for this user. Some of them you might need to read between the lines to get it, but a few lessons from Captain Cook from the case of the former speaker, Mr. Obasa. The next user is First Love, speaking about this situation as well. Says he announced his governorship ambition too early. Now, did he announce his governorship ambition? And not clearly. He just said, well, isn't he also... does he not have the prerequisites to become governor, saying he's qualified to be Lagos governor? He goes on to say, he said he's better than Fashola and Sanwo. He made a bad statement the day Sanwo went to present 2025 budget. He had it coming from First Love. Okay, Biden is next. I imagine this is Biden, not Biden. And Biden has this statement: this is serious. That's how Bidin puts it. This is serious. Impeachment of Lagos State House of Assembly. Then says better days ahead. We'll see. The better days, which as usually says, is ahead in the State Assembly. But another part of this conversation that people are celebrating is the fact that for the first time, Lagos State has a female speaker in the person of Mojisola Miranda, emerging as the first female speaker of the Lagos Assembly. So, way to go for affirmative action. By the way, a lot of people do not understand the interplay, what eventually brought this up. But let's listen to her speaking. First female speaker of the Lagos State Assembly.
Contained in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and so help me God.
So help me God, she says. And of course, she says that afterwards she called everyone to come work together, but clearly there will also be some division in that State Assembly if 90% impeached the former speaker. So what happens to the 10%? Where are they? And it's quite instructive. The new speaker is called Miranda, and for the former speaker, Mr. Basa, it looked like someone read a Miranda rights to him, because he's been very quiet now. So when they say you have the right to remain silent, he's been quite silent about this. But of course, keep asking those questions about this process, what he thinks about it. Adamson of Lagos says, we thank God for the amazing opportunity. Lagos State is in a safe hand. This is a big one for us at Apapa. So someone else's loss is another person's gain. So Apapa, Etiosa, and the entire Lagos. The princess is trusted, and we are glad for Providence. So there you have it. Her people are definitely excited about this one. Adewale Damilare says there shouldn't be a vacuum in governance. Nice one. Let's see what she can do differently. There you go. I recall the former speaker also had issues. I would say the House generally with Governor Sanwo-Olu's commissioner nominees at that time. You might recall that one. So is this another issue that added? Well, Batifiori is the next user. Says, congratulations to the daughter of the soil. May your tenor favor every Lagosian. So, there you have it. A lot of people are also celebrating this particular one. But let's move on to this big one about sports. Yes, the new Super Eagles coach has been unveiled. Shell, that's his name. By the way, a lot of people might recall when he was at the helm against the Super Eagles and his team won. So people are hoping that he's able to replicate that with the Super Eagles. First, with Chan. And there you have it, Eric Shell, the new coach of the Super Eagles. He's smiling, and we hope that Nigerians can join him in smiling when we're watching the matches of the Super Eagles. Quite a lot of job definitely on his hands. Chan World Cup qualification, so hopefully he's able to deliver, because Nigerians do not play with the Super Eagles. So a lot of people wishing him the very best. The Jagaban of Jos, I hope it delivers. Marco of Nations saying that there you can see the Jagaban of Jos. But Marco of Nations says, we hope NFF is right about this appointment. I wish Shell the best. I celebrate the Super Eagles. So yeah, we look forward to seeing how that plays out. All the best to Eric Shell as he takes over the affairs of the Super Eagles. And let's see, just an update, by the way, police have arrested a suspect for beating a lady in a supermarket. I know that a lot of people must have seen that particular picture and the video, but we understand that the police have arrested the suspect for beating a lady in a supermarket. So these are some of the trending stories. Don't forget, let us know what you think. You can message us right away on WhatsApp. Let us know what you think about the conversations, whether it's the budget or the Lagos State Assembly drama. Send them right our way, right here on the Morning Brief. We'll take a moment, and it's over to the guys now. There is this thing about the right of every Nigerian to have access to food. That would be beautiful, right? But what is being done about this, and how well can this become a reality? That's our next part of conversation right here on the Morning Brief, so stay with us.
let's talk about food security. We're joined on the program by Mr. John McKenna, who is the country director of Oxfam Nigeria. Mr. McKenna, thank you so much for coming on the program.
You're most welcome having me this morning.
Food is an important conversation, so let's throw a bit of just simple data. We've not done quite well in terms of food security. We're bordering and hovering around 39 to 40 and slightly around that percent in the last few months since this administration. This is going on 2 years, so food has not really performed well. Cost of living is high, is astronomical, people are struggling. We also have gains in terms of security forces doing their bit, but sometimes we're losing those gains because we just heard about 40 farmers were killed. So what do you help us make sense of broadly what is going on within the food security spectrum, if you will? Allow me to use that term.
Thanks very much. Perhaps we'll start from looking at the issue of food as being a basic necessity for human survival. And it forms as well the cornerstone of any national development, because it's actually people that contribute to national development, and you need healthy people to be able to do that. And when you're talking about food security access, and so you're talking about accessing adequate and nutritious food, which is very important, and it becomes a human right issue, fundamental human right issue. The good development, I think, for Nigeria is that we have made some good progress. Looking at the shift from where we're looking at Food Security Act, now looking at the right to food. Now, when you're talking about issues of right to food, there are a number of issues that needs to be looked into. First of all, when you're talking about people's rights, it's kind of an entitlement. So this is an entitlement that every Nigerian has. Unfortunately, yes, as you're putting it, we have some challenges that we're experiencing. Projections from Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, indicates that 33 million people would be facing food insecurity in 2025. Now, if you're talking about that number, a lot of people, so actually it's 33 million, that's a huge number. So what it means is basically 33 million Nigerians would be missing out on their food entitlements. Remember, we're talking about right to food. And as I said, right to food is an entitlement that citizens have. Now, there are a number of issues that we should also be looking into within the food security. One is basically the whole issue around production. Then there is the whole issue in terms of access and an element of affordability, which is also linked to the whole issues of access. Going back to the issue of production, first of all, I should also recommend that the government, for accepting to move into looking at right to food from Food Security Act, is already an advancement. So I would want to say that's a very good recommendation, and congratulating the government of Nigeria for basically moving into that direction. On the other hand, we should be looking at, are we able to basically to review what we said we'll be achieving under the right to food. So issues of production, are we able to produce enough to be able to feed our citizens? There are a number of factors that have to be looked into in that area. One is basically looking at what's our policy that is promoting food production. When you compare Nigeria to other countries, Nigeria is already on a potential position because diversity in food is one of the issues that is available in Nigeria. It's not just looking at one type of food. I mean, people are eating rice, people are eating yams, people are eating sweet cassava, sweet potato, and so many other things. Already that's a diversity in food which is recommended. However, the issue of production, if adequate people, and as I said, 33 million still missing their food entitlement in 2025, that's a concern. So we should be reviewing in terms of our strategies. Do we have all the strategies in place for us to be able to look at issues of production? Now, within this, you need to look at a number of issues. For example, issues around inputs. Do our farmers have access to adequate input to be able to produce enough If you look at availability of land, which is one of the factors that would enable production, I would actually say Nigeria, as compared to other countries, is on the positive side. But perhaps there are other factors that have to be looked into. As I said, it could be an issue of having inadequate inputs that have to be looked into. Inputs would be looking at a number of issues. I mean, it could be looking at issues to do with seeds, for example. Do the farmers have the right seeds that they could plant and be able to produce enough? Do they have enough training to understand, for example, all issues to do with post-harvest losses? Because it says that globally, 50% of harvest would actually get lost if there are no proper mechanisms. So these are issues that have to be looked into. So what I'm trying to emphasize is there is need basically to be able to say, okay, we have had the act from 2023. 3rd March 2023, that's when it was enacted.
All right, Mr. McKenna, if I may comment, just a moment, Mr. McKenna, if I may comment. I know you've spoken about a lot of things and you've touched a couple of them, so let's take them in bits. I want you to speak to what you see from the end, from government's end, whether you're seeing this level of urgency you're talking about. You've done the analytics to say, by percentage, this is what this is how it will affect the citizens, and by the figures, this is how it will affect the citizens, and those figures are quite scary, looking at our population. So I see a sense of urgency, because I know there was supposed to be waivers or tax cuts, VAT cuts, or literally zero for essential food. I don't know, stand to be corrected, that program actually took off. There were even outlines by the customs as to the procedure and all of that, how effective it was. I do not think it was as effective. I don't even know whether it even started. So I want you to piggyback on that to speak to urgency of government and whether they are or not they are showing that level of urgency as far as the issue of food is concerned.
I think one of the key issues that we should be looking at is just looking at the population that I've talked about that will be missing is food entitlements. And basically we should be going back to the drawing board to be able to analyze in terms of how much did we harvest in the last, how much production did Nigeria manage to get in the last harvesting season? And what are we missing out? All these issues that I've talked about in terms of seeds, in terms of inputs, in terms of post-harvest losses, are things that have to be considered. But I mean, this is very important because we're not just looking at the government, but we need to look at other stakeholders as well. NGOs, civil society organizations, and so many other players. I mean, we've got commercial farmers as well that are playing a role in ensuring food security. So all these players, I think we need to kind of go back to the drawing board, but this is something that the government needs to initiate because remember, the government is the chief duty bearer when it comes to meeting people's entitlements. So when it comes to issues of food, we should be going back to say, hey, here we are. Are we meeting all this that we said we'll do? I mean, it helps, honestly, when you kind of have something drawn to say, this is what we want to intend to do. So different stakeholders, as you're rightly putting it in terms of subsidies and even waivers that needed to be there. Are we fulfilling what we said we'll be doing? I'm mindful, yes, this was done in the previous government. So we have a new government in place. But these are things that we should be able to say, let's go back and look at the drawing board that we said we'll do, and to be able to do that. There are a number of other factors. I mean, for example, this just looking at production, but we should also be looking at issues of of distribution, which actually looks at issues of access. Not everybody is able to produce, but there are people that needs to be able to buy, people that could go to the market to be able to find food. Are we able to get the particular food that we require in the different corners of the country? So these are issues, I think, that we need to kind of look into and to be able to verify. There are issues that I think NGOs can do and other stakeholders can do, which is basically complementing to the chief duty bearer as the government, as I said earlier on. And these are things that needs to be looked into and looked into as fast as possible. There are players to do, like the Food and Agriculture Organization, WFP, who are able, for example, to be able to provide food to people that are in need. We should be emphasizing in terms of, can we do production in country? If we cannot get it in country, at least the surrounding countries be able to provide. I mean, to be able to buy food from them and be able to meet the people.
In terms of access, if you looked at the efforts of the subnational and even the federal government, you would find that there's a bit of intentionality, for instance, in the construction of access roads to communities where agricultural activity is ongoing. You find in some states of the federation, and if you looked at the budget, you find also some allocation to structures like the National Agricultural Development Authority for land clearing and for other implements and seedlings to be distributed to farmers. The question now is, what do you find in terms of accountability in the allocation of such funds, and the expenditure of such funds to farmers and to such structures such that there will be productivity in terms of agriculture?
So, a number of issues. First of all, when we're talking about issues of access and distribution, it goes beyond just looking at the road network, but we should be looking at regulating in terms of availability of particular foods in the different areas. The issue you raised, which is very important in terms of distribution of budget, for example. Do we have adequate budget to be able to meet all these needs that we are talking about? Again, this is something that needs to be looked into at national level, at federal level, but at the same time, we should also be looking at what is happening at state level. Are we talking about the same things? Because sometimes there could be differences between federal plans and state plans, but we need to kind of bring all this together so that we're able to provide what is required by the smallholder farmers. One other key important element is basically the whole issue about extension services. Extension services that has to be provided by the state to be able to go out to the different farmers, because they can get seeds, for example. They can get improved inputs, but they will not be able to know exactly how they will need to use these. So it's important that we have adequate extension services, which in most cases, they are not adequate. There are challenges in terms of the ratio between one extension officer to the number of farmers that they have to meet. So these are issues that have to be looked into and addressed to be able to look at improved production of different foods that we need in the different corners of the country.
And even when these structures have been put in place in terms of human resource and what is on ground to enhance productivity, the challenge also seems to be in the area of security. Despite the steady rise in the budget allocated to security, Nigerians remain unsafe, particularly in the last decade. And there have even been some gains in the last year or two, particularly by the armed forces, in checking insurgency and banditry that seem to be impacting significantly on agriculture. But why is there a missing link in that area? Why hasn't it translated into progress or a sense of safety in communities where agriculture are taking place?
I think it would be important at different levels, with that state or federal level, for different stakeholders to come together to be able to look at the issue. For example, the issue of security is indeed very important, and it has to be addressed because it is indeed affecting low production, because farmers are not able to go to their fields because of fear of being abducted or being killed and all that. So this is where we should be looking at the different stakeholders at state level, even at federal level, to sit together basically to design, come up with a strategy that will be able to say, how do we go about, particularly during the time of production, time of cultivation, we should be able to protect our citizens, and so the citizens are able basically to go to their fields and do what is required for them to be able to produce adequately. So these are issues that needs to be looked into.
Mr. McKenna, let's talk about subnationals and the roles they can play to ensure food security, because most of the time, We just beam our searchlight and our focus on the federal government. But now they are collecting record high numbers in terms of allocation. The last time was 1.7 trillion. We were even concerned about money supply with that kind of money injected into the system, given the fact that for some of them or a lot of them, they change this money to dollars and God knows what they use it for, as far as the people that are watching that space have alleged. So what exactly, if you were to, I'd like to do this geoeconomics of Nigeria in terms of critical focus, so that these governors who are watching the show will be able to know exactly how to appropriate so that the people can be able to eat food. You talked about food as an entitlement, and I like that phrase.
A number of things. I think, as I said, as being an entitlement, we need also to look at the role of citizens. The role of citizens is basically to demand on the duty bearers in terms of what they said they would do, and check whether they're doing what they said they would do. So when you look at the national allocation of finances to the state level, the citizens at state level should be able to go to state secretariat and be able to demand to say, we want to know how you have used this allocation that was made to our state, and whether it is actually meant to help us, or basically it has gone into some people's pockets. And actually, even the change from Food Security Act to looking at the whole issue on the right to food was as well from the voice of the people. People demanded for it, and the government accepted, which is good. Similarly, at state level, we should be able, citizens should be able to organize themselves and be able to demand these services, be able to demand to check what has been allocated to the different sectors, and whether it's just on paper or it's actually practical on the ground. So these are things that citizens should be able to do. So it's as well the role of the citizens to be able to demand, wanting to see what is being done by the different actors at state level or even at federal level.
I think sometimes, Mr. McKinney, asking citizens to demand, I know it is a role, but it's almost a tall order, because let's even go to the basics or the bottom line, which is the local government. How many people can actually access their local government to make this demand? Which is why I wanted you to speak to the top, exactly from the state governors, as to what to do to directly impact. Because most of the time what we do is we look at these monies and appropriation. But when you look at the impact at the end of the day, and you see just a very wide gap, despite the monies being expended.
It is actually the responsibility of the citizens, as I said, at different levels. I mean, but there is an issue in terms of, are they aware that they can actually go out and demand for these services? Are they aware that they could actually go and demand and wanting to see accountability of whatever was allocated to either at state level or at federal level? So this is something that we need to continuously talk about. Perhaps this is the role of the civil society organizations, that they need to kind of bring about the awareness to the citizens to be able to do what is required of them. But this is something, as I said, being an entitlement, it requires as well an accountability, and it requires the role of different stakeholders, including the citizens themselves, to be able to demand, wanting to see what is changing, what is not changing. What is put on paper, is it being translated practically on the ground? And these are things that our citizens, they need to be taken through and get that understanding and basically get organized. I know in most cases, when they get organized, the government thinks they are basically against them. But I mean, this is their responsibility. This is their entitlement. If it's a right, they have the entitlement. They need basically to be able to demand for it as well as is required. Thank you.
Mr. McKenna, the reason I asked that question, but I'm going to leave it to that, because you have to contextualize the Nigerian setup and how it works here to be able to know what is practical and what is not. So if we were to extrapolate as to, because food inflation is a big problem for us, food, generally the cost of living. If you were to give the government some level of an advice, consulting for the government, maybe FOC, say in the next 6 to 18, even to 24 months, this and this and this can actually turn the tide. I know you mentioned this in passing in terms of policy direction, is what I'm asking now.
Indeed, yes, but I mean, what I was saying is when the act was been done in 2023, there must have been already a plan in terms of what needs to be done differently. Because the key is how do we do things differently for us to be able to achieve food production in the country and enable our citizens access nutritious, adequate food that they need in their household. And so we should be looking at all that. And as I said, the number of players that need to be able to look into this is not just the government, as I said. There are other players, for example, the commercial farmers and all that. But the government is there to regulate all this, to regulate in terms of what do we expect from the commercial farmers, for example, and to be able to monitor, are they doing what they should be doing? Are we able to provide the inputs that our farmers require? We have also just talked about the issue of security. We should be able to monitor as well in terms of are farmers able to get to their food?
My apologies, Mr.
Not,
Makina.
what needs to be done differently?
Mr. Makina, we're winding down, so just last word, 30 seconds. What you're saying are conventional. I'm thinking of what unconventional measure we can use.
One is basically to bring about the stakeholders to a drawing board, to be able to look at all this and actually genuinely be able to ask ourselves questions. Are we achieving what we said we wanted to achieve? If not, can we do things differently to expect different results? Because we cannot continue doing what we've been doing and expect different results. So that's very, very important. And this is where we need to bring together different. The government needs to lead on this and be able to basically see the role of the different stakeholders and monitor them, as I said, to see whether they are doing and delivering what they said they will be working on.
All right. I must thank you so much, Mr. John Makina, Country Director of Oxfam Nigeria. Thank you for your intervention. We appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You're most welcome for having me here.
All right, to take a quick break. When we come back, I know some people are not very comfortable with numbers and calculation. Well, a gentleman has decided to make things easy for those of you who are scared whenever you hear of mathematics or science. He decided to use pidgin to teach people how to understand the complexities of computation in mathematics. We're joining us in just a moment after this break. Join us again.
Welcome back. And so for some of us who were not the very best of friends with mathematics in school, when we see those who are so good at it, we need to get them to sign autographs, and perhaps that's what we'll be doing right after this segment. But before we get to the autograph part of it, let's welcome Otuebe, Alison, Zacchaeus, maths teacher, who joins us on the morning brief this morning. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're so glad to have you. And you came all the way from Delta State just for this show.
Oh, yeah.
So let's make it as productive as we can, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right. So you have above 300 in your JAM, and you teach mathematics, physics, and chemistry.
Yeah.
Now, when I saw that on your bio, I was like, wow, did he fall from the sky? Did you fall from the sky? Yeah. Why such deep interest in all the figures and subjects that carry the figures?
The concern is that we've actually had a poor background in academics, and then we were striving to see how we can be able to break this barrier. So to that effect, we decided to purchase a lot of books, read a lot of books, just because we want to be good, we want to break that barrier of not understanding maths and science. So when I delved into that particular path, and then I was able to see tremendous results. And then that was when I started saying, okay, because I have seen the breakthrough, I need to carry people along. people need to know mathematics and science.
But
in way and manner, yeah.
But there must also be a backstory to your great level of knowledge. Did you always like numbers, or was it a teacher, that sort of turned something around in your disposition to mathematics?
Yeah, I like dealing with numbers. That was the fundamentals. But the problem is that over the time in secondary school, you would always see that the performance in math class was always poor. And that was because of the poor not having teachers in school and the rest of that. So that was the drive. I said, no, I can't remain like this. I have to push forward to see how I can be able to break this barrier of not knowing mathematics as I wanted.
So your scores now began to improve?
Exactly. So I think I started pulling. There was a guy that would not allow me to take at least second or third position. You see the margin. So I said, no, from SS2 I'll pick up. And then when I started doing a lot of mathematics, I started taking first position in mathematics. And then I said, no, I have to influence that, pull into physics, chemistry, and that's how everything works the way it is right now.
And it's working so well.
Yeah, sure.
Because you're so comfortable, you are able to even teach mathematics in Pidgin.
Exactly.
So that slant, what informed your decision to pick up that language?
Yeah, like I said, when I was struggling to read these things, it was very difficult because our time there was no ChatGPT, there was we don't have access to the internet because we were schooling in the village. So, and I saw how difficult this was to get this. So I had to, any money paid from students, when students pay me for tutorials, I would just invest it into buying books. All right. So when I bought a lot of books, I will sit down and consume them. So I said, no, people will not pass through all of these things. So in order to make this thing relatable to students, I had to switch into teaching students in Pidgin English, and I started that on my channel. I think I was having 5,000 followers on Facebook over the years. So immediately I switched to Pidgin English. There was a tremendous engagement from 5,000 to hundreds of thousands followers, and that happened also on TikTok. If you check Instructor Alison tutorials, you will see from 40,000 to 120,000 followers. Also, even Instagram, that was having I think 900 followers for years, it switched to about 9,000 plus followers. So that was because I switched from English to Pidgin English, and then people related, students they found it helpful, and then they were kind of engaging more on that Pidgin English. And if you check the comment section, you see a lot of sweet comment.
So was this also translated in learning outcomes, or was just some people who were like, oh, let's go and see that guy that's teaching mathematics and Pidgin English, more like the bandwagon thing, or you saw effect in learning outcomes?
Oh yeah, I tried the first time, and then the result was a bit slow. I said, no, let me try again. Immediately I tried the second one, and I saw the video going viral. Students were engaging, they were loving I said, no, I shouldn't continue with English. Let me switch, since these people are really understand. I had to make a little research. How many people are understanding Pidgin English? And I saw that more than 75 millions of people are speaking Nigerian English. They want to take the integral of that 75 million over other countries. You will notice that more than 100 millions of people speak Pidgin English. I said, no, I have to reach this wider audience. Even these people, these marginalized students who can have access to quality education, they need to understand this thing. These people who are struggling, say I don't know mathematics, I always feel jam and all of this. No, these people are my target. I need to solve these people's problems. So I have to maintain Pidgin speaking.
And I understand that you also have a prayer that you pray before you start the mathematics. Okay, so let's get into it. Teach us something in mathematics. I doubt that I can follow, but I'll try.
No, you will understand. I will lie for you. You go understand something.
Let's start now.
So if I have, people are always talking about calculus. Calculus is very difficult, and calculus is divided into two. We have what we call the differential calculus, otherwise called differentiation. We have another one called the integral calculus, otherwise called integration. So, for example, if I have the integral of, say, 2x squared plus 3x with respect to x. Now, looking at this question is scary. This kind of thing now, I will use Pidgin now so that you will understand. She understand. So now, if you want to integrate this thing, now simple something, what you need to know first. Now the formula of integration, you know how this idea represent integral. This elongated s, now the symbol, this elongated s very long like this. Now integral sign with that, I go lie for you. So what you will do now, you just say integral is equal to x raised to the power of n plus 1 all over n plus 1 plus c. This thing are constant. They call it for English arbitrary constant. When you say arbitrary constant, now small thing, it means say if you use any number, what if you constant, all this 1, 2, 3, 4, reach, if you use any number represents c, now what it mean? If you integrate finish, just add c. How I want to take run now for this one? See this particular one, now be the first term, this 2x squared, this one be the second term. So make it cheap. Just carry this one, multiply this one. You can say integral of 2x squared dx plus carry this one relate to this one to integral. I never begin to solve them. It's just make it cheap so that you understand. But don't break them down. Say you see this thing now, no, you know from anywhere I come. Now me just carry this one relate to this one, carry this one still relate to this one. Now wait to see like this. So I want to take integrate using this formula. It's simple though. That's not even hard. Just come out this 2. You say 2 now constant now. Keep 2 outside first. Then come carry this x where you see for this place. This power we see at this 2. It means anywhere you see n, may carry this 2 put inside. So you understand? Now you are the talk to now. You understand when I talk? So you understand? I make you run. I make you finish up. So now you can become this 2 now. Put on here go be 2 plus 1. We've been there over 2 plus 1. You don't finish with this one no. Plus make we run this one. Make it as it hot. 3 into what of this x? Now this same x we see. But you know say this thing you get 1 on top here. That one no go fit carry eye see am except you use microscope. I go lie for you. So that microscope now you know say after 1 there. Anywhere you see n, put 1 plus that one we've been there before over this one 1 plus 1. Don't forget I say when you finish everything, add waiting. Talk now, you are talk now. Add waiting. Add C.
I don't know.
No, you follow. Actually, you catch the flow. So no,
you're turning water into wine.
No, I don't think they understand. So 2x, 2 plus 1 are waiting. 3. Now waiting. 2 plus 1.
2 plus 1 is 3.
I say, I know all of that. The flow now. So you write 3 all over 3. Will be 2 plus 1 over there plus 3x. 1 plus 1 are waiting. 2 over 1 plus 1 are waiting. 2 plus this one. C. As it did like this, and the answer be that too. It's as simple. You go need another example. Maybe not do integration again. Make you do small algebra. You see what students they fail for exam. If they give you something like this. X squared minus 2 equal to 7. Make you find x. Like you as you watch time, I see me find x, you go rush say the answer na 3. I go say na 3. If you do it for jam, you go fail. Ma show you say no be 3. See am. Some of you say anytime you see minus 2, carry and cross. You don't get leg to cross. If you say make you fly, you don't get what you go do. The way you go do and you go sweet, you say just say add 2 to both sides of the equation. Because when you add 2 to both sides, when minus 2 and plus 2 see, then go come out, they delete themselves. So now you see say this one and this one they don't delete. X squared now will remain equal to 7 plus 2. Now waiting. Tell me now, why they look
7 plus 2 is 9.
Now 9 are we? Okay, put 9 there. It's simple now, it's just the thing is simple. So now here we put the gay issue. When you see x squared equal to 9, they can say me find x. So when we say no be x with that. No be x with that, on the x squared we see. They say me find x. So how you go take get this x now? You just take the square root of both sides of the equation. Now, when you know the square root property, it means say if you add square root for the left hand side like this, when you reach the right hand side, not just add square root only, add plus or minus square root of 9. What did that mean? It means say,
where did you find 9 again? How did 9 come into this equation?
And two of us agree now, say 7 plus 2.
Oh, okay, 9. Okay.
Another 9 with that. Now square root what I bring. Why I bring the square root now? Now just to carry come out this square. Make we see only x stand alone. It means anytime we square root and x they meet, then they delete themselves. Because they need to agree normally. So x now will be equal to. What did this mean say? You go find two things where we say like 3. If you get minus 3 and plus 3. If you square this one and square this one, you sure say you give us the same answer. That's why they ask now. You go give how? You know say when you get a all square, it means a times a. You know this one? If you get a squared, or what if I get a cube? It means a 3 times abi. Maybe a times a times a. The same way we get minus 3 all squared. It means waiting. Minus 3 times minus 3. You see, Pabi? Similarly, yeah, if you get plus 3 all squared, it means plus 3 times plus 3. minus times minus na plus. You don't know that rule. That rule simple now. The rule say if you get plus times plus na plus. If you get plus times minus na minus. Then this one write and down. Now carry book. Another they talk to. Another if you get minus times plus na minus. Don't forget to finally minus times minus na plus. Just learn this 14. You will help you for life. So yeah now minus 3 times minus 3. If you say minus times minus here, we don't talk say na plus. 3 times 3 na waiting 9. Yeah, plus times plus. We don't talk say na plus. So 3 times 3 na waiting na 9. Is it say if you get minus 3 squared and plus 3 squared, all of them will give you 9. So if you can say the answer now only 3 will be plus 3, you can't neglect this negative 3. Now why jam say you don't fail? They won't fail because you know jam now they will put answer where we say if you add you will see the answer. If you multiply you you divide you will see the answer. So finally here going to be plus or minus square root of 9 and 3. This thing means say x will be equal to either it will be plus 3 or it will be minus 3. Now be the answer. It's as much simple. Now this is a way we say if you use big English for textbook, you will retire and then you understand. For pidgin now, if you break them down like this small, everything will clear. I mean I physics, organic chemistry one as they talk. We go on organic chemistry. Or na physics.
Listen, it's not simple. It's still not. It's not. What is? You've moved from 3 to. Okay, let me not confuse you. I'm lost here, but not necessarily everyone is lost.
Ma do the one who understand, Nana. Ma do one small we go switch you. If you get this small question, see if you get x plus 2 equal to 9, they can say find x. This is a basic linear equation.
Okay.
You see, it has to be like this.
So x here is 7.
I take no.
Because if you subtract 2 from 9, you get 7.
It has to be book. No. Now so it takes a book. Life not supposed hard. Ma give another one. Now so.
Okay, just one more.
Okay. What if I get y? It's just we don't need to talk of x now. Maybe we change that small. If you get y plus 3y equal to 8. It is the answer. You don't have
the teacher, so solve it yourself.
You don't have collecting of like terms. Like terms is anything where they the same, make you add them together, make you collect them, make them do together. You see this y and 3y and they together. So what you will do? Now plus there, make you add them. But people now go say this is not 3y. Why? They don't know say this y right there, if they carry 1. That one we know go use IC. Spiritually 1 there, bring out to manifestation. You understand? So as you get 1 here we know see. That one will add to this particular 3. We're going to give you 4. As y they resemble, just take one of them equal to 8. How I want to get a y now? When you see things like this, to get a y simple, just say divide both sides by waiting 4. As I said, the right now for book and I correct. So if 4 now cancel out with 4, now y they remain be equal to 8 divided by 4. How many times will 8? 4 will go inside 8. How many times will 4 go multiply to give 8? 2. You see, is that a no. This is simple.
Okay, thank you so much. There's hope for me after all.
Yeah, hope there. For you.
All right. Just one more question as we wind down now. Talk to us about how this has translated into finances for you, the visibility on social media, and the unique slant of using Pidgin English.
Okay, the main concern is about the students. My interest has been helping students to understand math and science through Pidgin English. So that is the transition I just delve into, and that is what I'm currently working on. So I'm not much concerned about the finances at the moment. So this is why when people are meeting or reaching out to me, instructor, I've been trying to do this, I've been trying to solve this, and it has been very difficult and all of those things. I said, don't worry, we'll solve this problem. So I will just start dealing with those particular problems. So my concern is how we can be able to reach out to the wider audience, people who are in the marginalized kind of communities. Yeah, they were not able to reach out to, maybe they don't know how to reach out to me, so they can be able to break these things, solve that problem that this math not really hard, solve this problem that this physics, this chemistry, balancing of chemical equations, all those quantum is advanced. Let's not talk about those ones.
All right.
So the ability to reach out to these people is a major concern. Do you understand? So the finances is not really the major concern at the moment
Yeah.
is how to solve their problems. Yeah.
And that's a good way to look at it, from the altruistic perspective, ensuring that there is development, first of all, before it comes to you. Thank you so much, Alison Otuebe, maths teacher, but with a slant in Pidgin English. He has just turned water into wine.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time on the program. Jeffrey, Kade, what is plus times minus?
It's minus now.
Did they get? Kade didn't answer.
It's not good to show up on national TV, Fantastic work you do.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alison. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great guy. Thank you so much.
So Alice, you know plus times minus.
I know plus times minus now, but I may forget in the next 10 seconds.
And you know minus times minus.
Thank you.
Minus times minus is plus.
Good, and plus times plus.
We have
Plus
come
times
to
plus
the
is
end
plus.
of the show.
No, we're not just here. We're checking in with President Bola
Okay.
in Abu Dhabi, and this is his second foreign trip for 2025. We've been keeping tabs. Overall, that's his 32nd foreign trip since he became
In
president.
how many months now? 19 months?
Since he became president. So in 2023 he had 12, 2024 18, then now 2 so far. So that's 32. And Jeffrey, he had that meeting with Paul Kagame, and it's quite interesting the conversation that they had. That's the Rwandan president, and that's just something we wanted to spotlight for you on the show this morning. The conversation that President Tinubu had with Paul Kagame of Rwanda.
Absolutely. So they're talking about Africa has what it takes to develop itself. We have the resources, the people, the capacity. We must look inward to improve intra-African trade and collaboration. I think this is quite important because at the end of the day, even the AFTA, we have not seen it as expedited as it should be in terms of implementation. Where we want to travel to an African country is quite difficult. It was quite embarrassing to see Africa's richest man, Aliko, saying that he has to stamp a lot of passports and visa across African countries. And then the man, I think from one of the multinational oil companies, travels, it's easier for him to travel across Africa than Africans themselves. It doesn't make sense. So I'm happy these conversations are coming and all of that. But another kettle of fish is the issue of the president traveling. 2 already in 14 days.
14 days.
32 in 19 months.
Yeah,
I believe already.
There's a private jet, so
and is it,
let's go.
Are those regular trips also part of the items in the budget that we just talked about today that need to be cut down significantly? And we should also look into the entourage to see if the president's directive that all such be cut down are being adhered to. So those are.
Who is going to audit the entourage? When they say those things, with the greatest sense of respect, I don't take it too seriously, because if the president says he's going to travel with 60 people, are we going to check? How are we going to confirm that he traveled with less than that?
Who are you?
And are we talking African?
You go back.
Or you go back? I don't know. Who is going to audit his?
Very important. And are we talking African development on Middle East soil? We should also be.
That is the point.
Yeah.
Should be made as well. So you had African leaders meet in Abu Dhabi to talk about what?
Development of Africa.
Africa. And when this could also happen in Africa. And guess what? President Paul Kagame did not actually put out that meeting on his X handle.
Yeah.
So
I think the
it wasn't important, right?
I didn't say you said.
For me, one of the things I hate, one of the photo ops I hate the most as a journalist is when I see African leaders going to one country. They have Africa, China, Africa, France,
Russia,
Africa, US, Africa. The whole of all our leaders who gather themselves in one, and we're not going there to, almost like a charity case, always looking for what to get. It doesn't make sense to me. We need to change that trend, and that's why I agree with William Ruto. He has his own issues, but that angle, I like it. If they're inviting us, let's send a few of our leaders, go and represent us. Whatever they want to share, let them share to us, not gathering all of us every time. Anyway.
I wonder if anybody was listening. Should form talking points in the coming days.
So there you have it on the show this morning. We've been able to empower you with some easy math. Bukola is now on the level of Einstein at this point. Stay with us right here on Channels Television. I'm Kayode Okikilu.
Remember, Sunrise Daily is top for the hour. Join us again tomorrow. I'm Jeffrey, as long as Remembrance Day.
And of course, we'll be back with more interesting conversations tomorrow. And through the week, I am Bukola Koka.